The human soldier rescued an alien warrior. She didn't know why she trusted him. Part 2. Escape through fire. The whine of scout drones echoed through the canyon, growing louder with each pass. Rowan and Thilara crouched low in the mining pod, peering through a narrow viewslet at the mechanical hunters skimming the rocky terrain. Earth Alliance models, Rowan whispered, recognizing the distinctive delta wing design. Advanced thermal sensors. They'll find us soon. Thilara's crystalline body shifted, fragments realigning as she prepared for combat. 3 exits from this canyon, all likely monitored. Rowan checked his medikit readings on Thilara's wounds. The improvised mineral treatment had accelerated her healing, but she was far from combat ready. As for himself, 4 days of minimal rations and constant movement had taken their toll. "We need a diversion," he said, rifling through his pack. "Something to draw them away while we move toward the eastern ridge." Thilara watched him curiously. "You have explosives." "Better." Rowan pulled out a small device with Earth Alliance markings. "Emergency beacon from my medikit. If I modify the frequency." His fingers worked quickly, rewiring the internal components. "It'll broadcast as a priority distress signal from a high-ranking officer." Understanding dawned in Thilara's amber eyes. "They will prioritize rescue. And we'll be moving in the opposite direction," Rowan confirmed, finishing the modifications. "Ready?" Thilara nodded, her crystalline form catching the morning light in facets of deep amber and violet. Together, they slipped from the mining pod and took cover behind a fallen ore processor. Rowan activated the beacon and hurled it as far as he could toward the western canyon wall. The reaction was immediate. 3 scout drones veered sharply, converging on the signal. Moments later, the distinctive roar of dropship engines filled the canyon as reinforcements responded to the apparent officer in distress. "Now," Thilara hissed, and they were moving, keeping low among the rusted machinery as they made their way east. The rough terrain slowed their progress, forcing them to navigate a labyrinth of abandoned mining equipment and unstable rock formations. Twice they froze as drones passed overhead, their hiding places mere shadows away from discovery. Thilara's natural camouflage, her crystalline body reflecting and refracting the environment around her, proved invaluable. As they climbed higher along the canyon wall, following a barely visible maintenance path, Rowan felt a strange sense of synchronicity developing between them. They moved as one unit now, communicating with gestures and looks rather than words, anticipating each other's actions with uncanny precision. By midday, they'd reached a narrow plateau overlooking a vast valley beyond the mining zone. In the distance, a dense forest of twisted, copper-colored vegetation offered potential shelter. But between them and that sanctuary lay 2 kilometers of open ground, currently serving as a staging area for Varian forces. "Your people," Rowan observed, watching crystalline figures moving among sleek, organic-looking vessels. "Quite a welcoming committee." Thilara studied the encampment, her posture tense. "Supply depot. Minimal combat units." Her 4 eyes narrowed. "But they will kill you on sight." "And what would they do to you?" Rowan asked quietly. "A warrior who survived because of enemy assistance." The silence that followed was answer enough. They retreated to a sheltered outcropping to reassess their options. Rowan shared the last of his rations, a tasteless protein bar that Thilara examined skeptically before consuming. "Your sustenance is inefficient," she commented. Rowan chuckled despite their dire circumstances. "You should try the standard issue stew. Makes this look gourmet." A sound escaped Thilara that might have been laughter, a crystalline tinkling like wind chimes. It startled them both, and for a moment they simply stared at each other in surprise. "I have not made that sound since before my final crystallization," she said softly. "Your final what?" Thilara's hand moved to her chest, where the central crystal that comprised her core glowed with a deep amber light. "When we reach maturity, our fluid forms solidify into permanent structure. The path we choose, warrior, cultivator, architect, determines our final form. Her eyes dimmed slightly. I chose warrior. Laughter is not encouraged. Something in Rowan's chest tightened at the thought. That seems like a high price to pay. Is it so different for humans? Thylara countered. You have chosen healer, yet wear soldier's armor. Carry soldier's weapons. That's... Rowan paused, struck by the truth in her words. That's fair. Their philosophical moment was interrupted by a familiar sound, the high-pitched whine of approaching drones, but with a different harmonic. Varian models. They found the humans at the distress beacon. Thylara said urgently. They will expand their search pattern. Rowan scanned their surroundings desperately. The only path forward led through the Varian encampment, a suicide run by any measure. Unless. The supply vessels, he said suddenly. If we could get aboard one. Infiltrate a Varian ship. Thylara's tone suggested he'd lost his mind. Their systems would detect your biological signature immediately. But not yours, Rowan pointed out. You could shield me, mask my presence with your crystalline structure. Thylara stared at him, her alien features unreadable. That would require constant physical contact. A deep resonance between our forms. Is that possible? She was silent for a long moment. Yes, but it requires trust. Complete trust. The word hung between them, heavy with implication. 4 days ago, they had been sworn enemies, products of a war neither fully understood. Now, their survival depended on trusting each other absolutely. I trust you, Rowan said simply. Something shifted in Thylara's amber eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. Without warning, she reached out, her crystalline fingers touching his face with unexpected gentleness. Then we must begin the resonance now. The sensation was unlike anything Rowan had experienced. A cool, vibrating energy that seemed to flow from her fingertips into his skin, spreading through his body like ice water through veins. He gasped, instinctively trying to pull away, but Thylara held him firmly. Your body resists, she said. You must accept the frequency. Match your breathing to mine. Rowan forced himself to relax, to focus on Thylara's alien breathing pattern, slower, deeper than human respiration. Gradually, the discomfort faded, replaced by a strange sense of connection, as if part of his consciousness now existed within her crystalline form. I can feel you, he whispered, astonished. Thylara nodded, her eyes glowing brighter. The resonance is establishing. It will allow me to extend my natural camouflage around you, but we must maintain contact. As twilight approached, they made their way down toward the Varian encampment, moving slowly to maintain their delicate resonance. Thylara's hand remained firmly clasped around Rowan's wrist, her crystalline structure subtly shifting to partially envelop his arm. They skirted the edge of the depot, Thylara's natural camouflage bending light around them both. Twice, Varian sentries passed within meters, but their eyes slid over the human-alien pair, as if they were invisible. There, Thylara whispered, indicating a sleek vessel being loaded with supplies. Secondary transport. Minimal crew. Together they slipped aboard, finding temporary shelter in a storage compartment filled with crystalline containers. The resonance between them had deepened to the point where Rowan could almost sense Thylara's thoughts, emotions and impressions rather than words. Fear, determination, and something else, something unexpected. Wonder. The ship's engines hummed to life beneath them. Through their shared connection, Thylara conveyed their destination. The vessel was bound for a forward operating base near the disputed border territories, areas where neither Earth Alliance nor Varian Collective held complete control. As the transport lifted off, Rowan found himself studying Thylara's alien features in the dim light of the storage bay. The rigid warrior he had found dying on the battlefield had transformed into something more complex, more nuanced, or perhaps she had always been so, and he simply hadn't been able to see beyond his preconceptions. You're staring, Thylara observed, her voice barely audible over the engine's resonance. Sorry, Rowan replied. I was just thinking. How strange this is. A week ago, I wouldn't have believed any of this possible. Thelura's crystalline structure shifted slightly, facets realigning in what Rowan now recognized as thoughtfulness. In the ancient cycles, before the crystallization became permanent, our species could change form at will, adapt to any circumstance. Her eyes met his. Perhaps some adaptability remains. The ship shuddered suddenly, dropping altitude with alarming speed. Emergency lights flashed as a computerized voice issued warnings in the musical Varian language. "What's happening?" Rowan asked, gripping the support beam as the vessel lurched again. "We're under attack," Thelura translated, her body tensing. "Earth Alliance interceptors." A massive explosion rocked the ship, sending them both crashing against the storage containers. The resonance between them flickered, threatened to break. And in that moment, Rowan felt Thelura's fear, not for herself, but for him. The transport began a rapid, uncontrolled descent. Through the resonance, Rowan sensed Thelura's decision moments before she acted. She pulled him close, her crystalline body reforming around him in a protective shell. "What are you?" "Trust," she said simply, as the world around them dissolved into chaos and fire. The impact came with devastating force. Metal screamed as it tore apart, and the last thing Rowan remembered was Thelura's crystalline form completely encasing him, absorbing the brutal shock as the ship slammed into the planet's surface. Then darkness claimed him, but not before he felt something impossible through their fading resonance. Thelura's silent plea: "Survive, human. Survive for both of us." Beyond enemies, consciousness returned to Rowan in fragments. First pain, sharp and insistent. Then sound, a high-pitched ringing that gradually resolved into the crackle of flames. He tried to move and found himself encased in something hard yet somehow flexible, like being inside a living shell. Memory flooded back. The ship. The crash. Thelura. Thelura. His voice was a ragged whisper. The crystalline cocoon around him shifted, facets realigning as it slowly unfurled. Light pierced his vision as the protective shell opened, revealing a devastated landscape of twisted metal and scattered debris. Thelura knelt beside him, her crystalline form dulled and cracked in multiple places. Violet fluid seeped from new fractures across her torso and limbs. She had taken the full impact of the crash, using her body as a shield for his. "You're hurt," Rowan gasped, struggling to sit up. "Functional," Thelura responded, though her voice sounded strained, the translator device clearly damaged. "You survived." The resonance held. Rowan reached for his medikit, finding it miraculously intact. His hands moved automatically, assessing her injuries with practiced efficiency. The damage was extensive, far worse than her previous wounds. Crystalline fragments had sheared away from her core structure, and the violet fluid, her lifeblood, pulsed weakly through increasingly unstable pathways. "Why?" he asked, applying emergency patches to the worst fractures. "You could have protected yourself instead." Thelura's 4 eyes dimmed slightly. Unclear. Decision was instinctive. Her head tilted in what Rowan now recognized as confusion. Not logical, not tactical, simply necessary. Around them, the wreckage of the Varian transport smoldered in the gathering dusk. They had crashed in a small valley, surrounded by the copper-colored forest they had glimpsed earlier. No immediate signs of pursuit, but that wouldn't last. Both Earth Alliance and Varian forces would investigate the crash site soon enough. "Can you move?" Rowan asked, finishing the emergency treatments. "We need to find better shelter." Thelura rose slowly, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. Rowan supported her, allowing her to lean against his shoulder. The resonance between them had weakened but not broken, and he could still sense echoes of her pain and determination. Together they limped away from the wreckage, seeking the cover of the strange forest. The trees were unlike anything on Earth. Twisted copper-colored trunks that spiraled upward, crowned with broad leaves that shimmered with an iridescent quality. The ground beneath was soft with fallen foliage that released a sweet, spicy scent when crushed underfoot. "These are cultivation trees," Thalura said, her voice filled with wonder. "Thought extinct on this world. Sacred to my people." Rowan helped her sit against one of the larger trunks. "Will that help? Your injuries, I mean. If these trees are special to Varians." Thalura's crystalline hand reached out, touching the trunk gently. A faint resonance passed between them, similar to what Rowan had experienced but deeper, more primal. "Yes," she confirmed. "They contain trace elements, beneficial to our structure." As night fully descended, Rowan constructed a small shelter using fallen branches and debris from his pack. He worked methodically, trying to ignore the growing sense of finality. Their situation was dire, stranded in contested territory, both hunted by their own people, with dwindling supplies and Thalura severely injured. Yet somehow he felt strangely at peace. "The resonance has changed you," Thalura observed, watching him work. Rowan paused. "What do you mean?" "Your biological patterns. They've begun to harmonize with crystalline frequencies. Unprecedented." Her 4 eyes studied him intently. "You feel it?" He did. Something had shifted inside him, a subtle realignment that made the world seem different. Colors appeared sharper, sounds more layered. And his awareness of Thalura, her presence, her emotions, remained even when they weren't touching. "Is it permanent?" he asked. "Unknown. No precedent exists." Thalura's voice softened. "But I hope it remains." The simple admission hung between them, fraught with implications neither was ready to fully explore. Instead, Rowan continued building their shelter while Thalura communed with the sacred trees, drawing strength from their ancient energy. Dawn brought new clarity and a discovery. While checking the perimeter, Rowan found footprints unlike any he'd seen before, neither human nor Varian. They led deeper into the forest, deliberate and purposeful. "We're not alone," he told Thalura, who had regained some of her strength overnight. "The sacred trees have facilitated remarkable healing, her fractured structure already beginning to realign and seal." "No," she agreed, her amber eyes focused on something beyond the trees. They approach. Moments later, figures emerged from the forest, humanoid but distinctly alien, with skin that displayed both organic and crystalline properties, a perfect synthesis of both species. They wore simple garments woven from copper-colored fibers, and they moved with a fluid grace that seemed to honor both human flexibility and Varian precision. "Hybrids," Thalura whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "Thought to be myths, forbidden tales." The leader of the group stepped forward, a tall figure whose features suggested both human and Varian ancestry. When they spoke, their voice carried harmonics that resonated peculiarly in Rowan's modified perception. "We are the synthesis," they said, "children of both worlds, rejected by both empires. And you." Their gaze shifted between Rowan and Thalura. "Have begun the journey we completed generations ago." "What journey?" Rowan asked, though something in him already knew the answer. "The resonance, the harmony between crystalline and organic life." The leader gestured toward the forest around them. "This sanctuary exists in the spaces between your warring empires, preserved by those who chose understanding over conflict." Thalura's crystalline form shifted with emotion. "Impossible. Our biologies are incompatible." "So we were told," the leader said with a gentle smile. "So the empires still insist. Yet here we stand, living proof of their deception." Over the following days, Rowan and Thalura learned the truth that had been hidden from both their peoples. The war had begun not from cultural misunderstanding or resource conflicts, but from fear. Fear of what would happen if humans and Varians discovered their profound compatibility, their potential for synthesis. The first contact at Epsilon Eridani hadn't resulted in unprovoked attacks or resource theft, as both sides claimed. It had produced the first successful resonance between the species, the first hybrid children. Power structures on both sides, threatened by what this meant for their authority, had manufactured conflict to keep the species apart. The synthesis had escaped persecution, establishing hidden enclaves throughout contested space, preserving the sacred cultivation trees and the knowledge of harmony between the species.